Welcome back to the program, a special edition of Channels and Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry Business Roundtable Business Perspectives on the state of the economy and the way forward. 1.5 hours, we're about half hour down, so we've got about 1 hour left. So you got to get on the conversation. You know, our Twitter handles at Channels TV and at Biz Morning, and of course you can tweet to Lagos Chamber, and of course you can tweet at me at B Bosin. We'd like to hear from you. Now let's get a bit more into this conversation, stretching things a little bit. Look at the agriculture as far as the latest GDP numbers are concerned from the Statistics Office. The sector grew 6.47%, 6.45% year on year. Looks like mining actually overtook agriculture at this point. That was in Q4 last year, but it's still very significant. Real Agric GDP growth in the fourth quarter was 4.03% year on year, which is an increase of about 0.5% compared to the same quarter in 2015, 3.48%. Quite a lot. You can get your time later in the day and chew them over. Let me bring in my panelists here to weigh in. George Onofuwokan from Coleman Wire and Cable, Tunji Falade from Agriculture, the man who wants to see more done in agriculture, and Dr. Nkena, who is a member of, a council member of the chamber and the CEO at Moorgate. George, let's start with you. I'm sure part of what you do in manufacturing, you don't need agriculture basically, but you need food to be able to work. So, in terms of sectoral perspectives moving forward, talk to us. How do you think the government can work on agriculture to help those of you who are industry?
I think with everything, we have to understand as industrialists or as manufacturers, there's no facet of life in Nigeria that is independent of this sector, which is the manufacturing sector, be it agriculture, be it oil and gas. Now, because one thing about industrialization or manufacturing is that you need second stage processing. Now, in anything we do, we need to move away from thinking that we are raw material suppliers of the world. We need to add value. And that comes back to our sector. We are the added value people. And now, in that sector, it's quite tough. Now, it's one thing for you to actually process something like orange juice and then reprocess it into concentrates, then reprocess it into packed juice. Now, that has gone from agriculture to a process to finished goods, second, third phase. Now, and that, I think, is a part of Nigeria that we need to focus on. And that's why our sector is very important, because we are the ones that will add value. And when you're trying to add value, that's when you start getting premiums. That's when we start talking about exports. That's when we start talking about added value chains. Now, for our sector to grow, you have to have what I believe focused growth strategy. Now, what I mean by that is that now, once we're talking about focused growth strategy, today, if you look at the exchange rate, to do a $10 million expansion, even a $1 million expansion, current exchange rate taking today official value of 300, 305, 315, you're talking 300 million. Now, if you did that a year and a half ago, at the rate of 160, you're talking 160 million. So the capital cost of any industrial product, the capital cost of any expansion, growth, now it's short, is 1 time, 1.5. Now, how do you achieve that? Most people will kill the decision. So you can have all the best agricultural products in Nigeria, and we still be like oil, where we are raw material suppliers, where if you look at mining today, we are raw material suppliers. Now, benchmark fact is, and this is where I think some of the times we get it wrong. Now, what I mean by we get it wrong, we focus a lot on the right strategy of growing the raw material base, agriculture, mining sector, but everybody loses focus in added value that actually triples your gains. So if I take one instance of mining today, Nigeria has one of the best lead content in mines today. But do we see anybody actually making lead chips? No. Now, I've spoken to actually traders in Switzerland that will tell us, why is your country just blowing up mine ore and then putting it into containers and shipping it to us? It doesn't take much to convert this lead ore into lead chips, and you get LME value. Now, at LME, I'm a commodity buyer because I buy copper or aluminum of the LME. and I'm buying secondary stage. I'm not buying cathodes. I need someone to have converted copper ore into copper cathodes for me to take it into smelting. We're going into smelting now because we actually see a chain going backward. But we have to actually look at the added value, the incentive for capital cost to come down, because now the capital cost has gone up. So now you have to look at the government coming back to subsidize the cost of borrowing. And that's pure simple. That's all they need to do. We're not saying give them free money. Go back to giving 7-8% single digit. CBN has done it before. We are beneficiaries. We are beneficiaries of it in 2010. Believe me, it created in 2 years, it created stability, and it created a job of 250. Today, it's lost to last year's position of recession. But we can actually grow it back by doing the same thing we did 5-6 years ago. It wasn't rocket science. Putting interest at 6-7%. It wasn't rocket science.
Let me ask Tunji, and thank you very much for that very insightful contribution. Tunji Falade, what would you want to see more in agriculture? We're talking about farming and agric. Where would you want to see more efforts being placed?
Okay, before I quickly answer that question, I would like to quickly say that agriculture has been redefined. Agriculture is not just limited to agronomy alone, which is production of crops and maybe rearing animals. Agriculture now has a whole gamut of value chain. That is, you're talking about production itself, you're talking about storage, harvest, storage, you're talking about agro-processing, then you're talking about marketing and distribution. That's a whole value chain. So that's what it is being called agribusiness. That is adding agriculture to business.
Is that what you're doing within your group in LCCI?
Yes, that's what we do, and that's what Nigeria should be focusing upon. For instance, right now, you discover that for Nigeria to get out of this wood, Nigeria must become industrialized. Let's start with agro-based industries. Just okay, Madam was talking about the fact that the paper mills are down, and that's a serious problem. The fact that BOS sometimes said 90%, over 90% of raw materials are imported industrial materials, there's an indictment on Nigeria that we have no business importing raw materials, because basic raw materials